Well, good morning. It's been a while since I've shown you what's been going on in the grove. Now that most of mango season is over, we have the next project after picking the mangoes, which is trying to maintain the trees. So we'll look at the northeast section of the grove. And this first tree here is malika. We actually still have fruit on malika. You can see a little bit there. A few weeks ago I was picking it, which is why there's all these little brown branches here. Sometimes I can't help but to trim back some of the tree as I'm picking the fruit. There's some of the fruit that's still hanging. A little bit more there. So we'll need to trim this after those fruit come off. And here's Neelam. Still has some fruit on it. Of course, that second crop is a very late variety. Or it's a very late crop. Oh, good morning, Chris. So yeah, here's some more Neelam. And as you might recall, we had the branch break here. This particular wound is not a good one. It's not clean. We had to trim off the branch that was 90% broken. So either this year or next year we will be trimming that back all the way down to here. But for now, we'll let it finish its developing of the second crop. This is Beverly. And Beverly's another late variety, so we didn't trim this tree at all yet. But, you know, you can see some very vertical, sprawling branches, so it's definitely on the hit list. It's Prom Chimea. Got a few branches on the ground with this one. This is a tree that has gotten large and we're trying to keep it under control. Sometimes your best laid plans for trees get interrupted by other events in life, and so some of these trees just got way larger for a few years, and now it's a matter of trying to keep them at a decent size for picking and maintenance. This is Carrie, and we trim some of these vertical branches in this center of the tree. Open up for light penetration, air circulation. Another cherry tree. Made a few cuts. Just trying to take out the most important branches at this point. We can come back and get some of the other parts of the canopy cleaned up with some smaller tools. We're using a chainsaw a couple days ago, so yeah, it's important to get the major cuts done first. This is another malika. This branches that we took out of there, and basically the same story. Took out some of the center of the tree. And this is Valencia Pride. And we took a few minor branches out up there, but the main thing we did with this one is take a rather major branch that was in the center of the tree out. So this is ice cream mango. It has lots of little branches, and so we haven't really done anything with this tree yet. I'm grafting with part of the tree, and so I was going to wait until my grafting project is over and then try and clean up some of this. You know, when you have such close branching, you end up getting dieback, and so all of this dead stuff should come out and then thin out some of these little branches so there's more light penetration. Also, there's probably 2 vertical branches up there that should come out, so that's on the to-do list. Here's a Namdak Mai. It's getting pretty leggy, so we'll have to try and fix that. A lot of these situations are not ideal. It would have been good for like every year to have been able to trim these trees. Here's a lemon meringue. Also not trimmed yet. This entire row was not part of the action plan a couple days ago, so we'll try and walk quickly through this. This is Dupuis Saigon. A lot of wood needs to come out of this because it's way too tall. This is a kit tree, and we actually already trimmed that one this year because it had so few fruit that we were able to trim early in the season. This is our kit tree that actually had a great crop, and so of course we're not trimming that until the fruit come off of the tree. And this is Palmer, another late variety. Of course, that one is waiting for the end of the season also before it gets trimmed. This is our Valencia Pride that we were a little more aggressive on. A lot more branches under this tree than the one next door. So we took, let's see if I can, well, it is hard to see it from here. Let's see. But there's a couple branches you can see, possibly with the cuts that took out some major vertical branches there. And basically we don't do everything that we want to on the first pass, so we have to save stuff for the next year because you want to keep the chance of a crop the highest as it possibly can be. So there's a lot of the tree that we didn't touch, but then we took out some rather major pieces of wood too. So this is one of our cogsall trees, and again, you know, it's years ago we were not able to keep this trimmed every year, so now is the time to try and get it back into the shape we want. And it's, as I said, a multi-year project, but we did take out some of the center of the tree, and hopefully we'll have some nice branching developing from some of these cuts that we made. You can see there's one little fruit left on this tree. This is one of our Pimsang Man trees, and it took some major wood out of this last year. So this year we didn't take that much out. A few little cuts of some branches that were in the wrong place, but really not a lot. Of course, what we were working with a couple days ago was a chainsaw mostly, and so, come back and get a lot of these branches cleaned up with my hand pruner and hand saw. This is another Pimsang bun tree. We took out some major branches in the center again. There's another one there. Took out that one there because it was growing into the neighboring tree. So next year we'll be taking out some more of these very vertical branches, but we didn't want to shock the tree. We just wanted to have another step in getting the tree down to a good size. This is a carry tree that was actually, it started off being another variety, and I top worked it, and it's just got way too vertical on the interior of the tree, so we took out 2 branches here, and then we left a few things to do either later in the season or most probably next year. I'll reduce some of the height of these tall vertical branches because there's plenty of lower branching on those. It's just that they kept going higher to get to the sun. This is Graham. Took a few branches out in order to thin the canopy. That one, and then there's a few that were getting too tall. Just basically trying to clean out the center of the tree a little bit. Of course, we still have some branches up there that are too tall, but one step at a time. So this is our little carry tree. Well, one of our many little carry trees. I've started to trim this a little bit with my hand pruner. There's no reason to use a chainsaw with a small tree like this. This is Jakarta. It's always a very productive tree for us, but it gets tall, so we took out quite a bit of the center vertical branches and such, and left some for next year and possibly the year after. It's good to have a long-term plan for these, and as I said, that this is playing catch-up, but I know that you can keep trees smaller, but I also know that sometimes the trees have a lower priority than many other things in life. So, working with what we have. But, yeah, this looks like a nice amount of sunshine that we'll be getting to this tree, and the fruit will be more accessible. And then next year we'll be able to eliminate this branch right here, and several of the other ones, depending on how much branching has occurred, how much new growth has occurred, to fill in where these cuts were made. Of course, this little Valencia Pride is one that we don't need to use a chainsaw for, so it was untouched. I can come back and use my handsaw on that. So this is another one of our cogshaw trees. It has a little different growth pattern than the first one, a little easier to work with. Still, we trimmed out quite a bit of the tree, but it doesn't look quite so drastic. Right here in the center, I put a few grafts to take advantage of some growth from last year. Basically, there's 5 different varieties, and it's just a source of graft wood, and I can always eliminate whatever I don't want in the future, but it's nice to have some healthy young growth going somewhere that I can use to graft onto other trees. Here's a Namdok Mai. Crazy year for Namdok Mai. We still have a few fruit on the tree, and of course we had some very early fruit from some of the trees too. So because of the fruit being on here, we didn't trim this tree yet at all. This is Zil Indo-Chinese. This tree was really suffering because of getting powdery mildew on its leaves. We had every leaf on this tree was brand new and looked wonderful, and then we got hit with cold weather, and the powdery mildew just didn't kill the plant, but it did make the leaves less efficient. This is the powdery mildew ones, the spotting and such on the leaves, and then we have the healthy new growth. So we needed to make some cuts, even though it's sort of a scraggly tree at this point. So we took out a few of the most scraggly branches, and one rather healthy looking branch that was just going too upright. And hopefully next year this tree will be a lot greener and we'll be able to make a few more cuts. One of the things that we did for helping this tree along was put a lot of the mango peels and scraps around the base of the tree as a food source. And so that's probably part of the reason that it's recovering. Well, it would have recovered in any case, but I think it's a little bit stronger recovery from its rather dire looking foliage before. This is Bailey's Marvel. That tree, if not trimmed for a few years, really gets large. So again, that's something that we always have to play catch up with. So we've taken out some of the vertical or the lateral branching here, and usually the part that is growing up, this one we trimmed last year actually was this part of the this cut, and then we had this major or semi-major branch going up from here. So this year we took that out, and that will send more energy to these lateral branches here. But those were pretty minor cuts. The major cuts were inside the tree. Oh my, I forgot to get that when trimming these big trees, you always find some fruit. I'm not sure if you can see there's one just nesting in the branches up there, so I'll need to climb that tree, try and retrieve that fruit. But basically trying to get some of the large vertical branches out of this. And as I said, it's a multi-year project, so we took a few out this year, take some more out next year. This is Pettigrew. Still has some fruit on it. So, managed to find some things to take out here. We had some branches that were too low, so cut them off. It's a rather small tree, so we'll probably thin some of these other branches after the fruit is off. You know, this one in particular here, this is going at a weird angle and across the middle of the tree, so that's really not ideal. After another 3 weeks or so, we'll trim that out. This is a Kent tree. Of course, that's another late variety, so we're waiting to trim that also. There's not a lot of fruit on this particular tree, but it still gets to wait. And then we have another Kent tree, a little younger, a little different growth habit at this point. So again, we'll come back after the fruit are off. Here's the lemon meringue. So we'll start going down the east side of these rows now, so the sun doesn't get in the camera. This first tree used to be a Florigon and has been completely converted to Edgar. Those are some of the latest grafts here. I should say it's almost completely converted to Edgar, because I did leave this part of the branch. So we'll see how that one does. I can always trim it off later. But we have some branches on that, around that wound, so that should help that area heal quite a bit. And this one here helps this particular area heal. So hopefully we'll get some fruit on Edgar next year. It's a relatively small lemon meringue, but we trimmed it anyway. It just really wants to be very vertical, so it's good to cut out the tallest branches, and this is something that this particular branch here, it's getting too close to this other branch, so on another trip with the chainsaw or even with a handsaw, we'll try and get that out of the way. Might be next year. There's always more things to do than time to do them. Here's our little Julie tree. Had a very nice season. And really not much that we did here. I went through and trimmed a lot of the dead branches out. Not all of them, but you know, that because it's such a dense grower, it tends to create too much shade for some of them, you know. See, this branch was mostly dead, but it had this right here on the top, or off of one of the branches. And yeah, it's not enough really to keep all that other stuff going. Take whatever you can out that's dead, and sometimes you take a little bit of stuff that's alive with it. No big deal. Yeah, but yeah, this was a lot twiggier, a lot of dead twigs in here before I started cleaning it out. There's always more to do, however. Okay, here's Bombay. Bombay is one of those varieties that really wants to be big. So, sort of a constant battle with this one. It's actually a little bit elevated, this whole area, because it was knocked over by one of the hurricanes years ago. So we propped that up, and of course it's rather vigorous now. And so we took out a fair amount of wood. There's a couple cuts there, and there's one over on that side. And we thinned out some of these other lateral branches too. There's a couple of Kent trees. Not too much fruit on this one, but still we want to wait until the end of the season before we get the chainsaw over here. Another Kent tree. Last on this side of the grove. Same story. Gotta wait for the fruit to come off. And we see a bunch of branches around this tree. This is Cushman. And Cushman had a nice year this year. We needed to trim it. The goal, as I said, is every tree every year, but that's just a goal. You gotta do what you can. There's one of the cuts that we made right there. And some of the, it's a little far up, but there's a few branches over there that we cut out. And at the end of this row, we have Jehangir, dwarf variety. So I don't need to use the chainsaw there. And this is Juliet. And even though it's a fairly small tree, we found one branch in the center. That's the branch that we trimmed out, and I'm working on trimming back the sides with my little hand tools. Here's one of our Glen trees. And have some branches down here. Basically took out some of the ones in the center of the tree. And because that one right there, you can't really see the cut. But anyway, it was blocking the sun to these other branches, which died back. So I'd much rather have the lower branches than the upper branches. This one we trimmed sort of where those small branches are coming out. And depending on how the new growth is, we might cut this branch down to here next year. But as I say, I just sort of have long-term vision for these trees, and there's not enough hours in the day to do every cut properly, but you do what you can and come back again and try and do a little bit more later in this time before the cold, and there's always next year. There's another Glen tree. Same thing, trying to get the longer branches out. Some of the lateral branches like this that had come off of this particular area had gotten too long, so too much fruit would just sort of pull it to the ground. So clean that up, and hopefully the production will be good next year. This is Edward here, and Edward still has a few fruit on them. I see two, this being one of them. So we didn't trim this tree. This is another Glen, and branches underneath, good indication that we got to this tree. So there's a cut up there that we made. Another cut over yonder. So yeah, I see a few more cuts that we could make if we have time. This is Dot. Dot is a very open canopy, sprawling kind of a tree, so it's important to trim some of these branches back, which we did. So there's a few of the branches. I think you might be able to see the cuts there. Didn't get everything pulled down, but come back and do that. Another Beverly tree, so gotta wait until the fruit come off on that. This is Southern Blush. It's a pretty nice year for Southern Blush, but some of the branches were getting too tall, so worked on that, and also thinned some of this over here. There's a particularly dense area of the tree in this part of the tree, so we took out some branches there. You can't really tell, but it's better for the tree to not crowd itself out in one area. This Valencia Pride still has some fruit on it. Took out some branches, but these lateral branches really need to be trimmed back. Wait until the fruit comes off, but this branch going way over like that just doesn't take much fruit at the end to make that whole branch drag, so that's on the to-do list. I'm finding a lot of things on the to-do list for this part of the grove. I think trimming is never done. It's always in progress. So 2 more rows and then we're done. This is the Zill tree that has Venus grafted onto lower branches. The grafting is pretty much complete. I'll just need to come back and take out the new growth that's in the wrong place that you don't want to use. But basically with this tree, there was a semi-major branch that was growing up a little bit vertically, so we took that out. This tree was super easy to pick this year compared to all other years, and it's because the younger growth sort of shot up, and then the weight of the fruit pulled it down, so it was all in the same general zone to pick, and it made seeing the fruit and actually getting to it a lot easier. So trying to maintain that. Some of these branches that are heading out long distance from the main trunk of the tree should be trimmed back before we get too much out of the season. But we got the major cuts done on this tree this year, and we'll see how much we get around to on the other cuts. Here we have Duncan. Still have fruit on the tree, but there were certain sections of the tree that no longer had fruit, so trimmed a few branches. I'll have to come back and pick that fruit there. It looks like a lovely one. Once they get yellow, they drop pretty quickly. It's Van Dyke. Van Dyke wants to be a big tree, and we don't want it to be, so it's a constant battle. I sort of feel like it's winning a little bit, but since it still has fruit on it, we couldn't make as many cuts as we would like. I'll come back in another week or so and get some more of the cuts made. This is sweet tart, and we didn't, of course, use chainsaw at all here. There's this branch here is dead. This one's dead. This one, of course, is dead, and this one is not. So I'm thinking that when I come back here with my handsaw, is I'll probably just cut this one right down here at the bottom. Sweet tart has a very upright growth habit, so at least that will open up that part of the tree, and all these branches from the other more active branches will fill in the center of the tree no problem. This is a carry tree. A lot of this is getting too lateral, and so what I do a lot of times is just cut back, so the last year's growth is taken off, so that these branches don't get too long. I try to avoid cutting right before a place like this, because there's lots of buds that can form branches out of the same area. I'd much rather go back about a quarter inch above a leaf back there, so you can choose where your branches are by what the position of the leaf is that you cut. So basically I need about 47 people helping with this particular kind of work, and we get it all done. But I'll come back and do that another time, hopefully sometime soon. This is another Beverly tree. it's probably the scraggliest one that we have, but we were not able to trim it yet because of course the fruit are still on it. This is lemon meringue, and this particular tree worked out pretty well. Of course, we just made the major cuts with the chainsaw, but you really can't tell what we cut out because, you know, the branches were just, they're, you know, in places where there are plenty of other leaves and such. But that's some of the carnage from this particular tree. And I see things to come back and trim with a handsaw and my other tools, but that was step one in that tree. And here's another lemon meringue. Not a lot of cutting on this tree. You see the branches underneath. But, you know, again, trying to keep the center of the tree a little bit open and take out the tallest of branches. So this is Fairchild. We actually cut a few of these branches out more than a week ago, and then trimmed a few more yesterday or 2 days ago. Again, trying to clean out the center of the tree, get some of the highest branches out. And again, there's always more to do. Here's a grafted tree, well, double grafted. It started off being irwin, and then I grafted it and top worked it to Carrie. And, you know, Carrie has that dense foliage thing going. So we took, even though it's a small tree, we took out the most vertical center part of the tree. And would have been a good thing a few weeks ago to come back and trim off some of these other branches, but time is at a premium this time of year. So, you know, cut below this kind of branch in here, or that part of that type of growth, and 1/4 inch above where you want the first branch to form. That'd be sort of fun to have that one like that. But yeah, if you go through and cut the tips off a lot of these branches, you will have a more compact tree and be productive still. It just won't require the big chainsaw projects and stuff that the other trees require now. So just cut below this particular ring here, and 1/4 inch above the leaf that we want the first branch to form. Now you can tell with this branch that if there were 1 or 2 fruits on it, that it would really pull the whole branch down. So that's definitely one to cut back, and so that it doesn't have as the fruit wouldn't have as much leverage on it. This is what happens in those little rings. You not only do you have the one branch coming out that is the dominant one, but right here is 4 other little branches, and they're all coming out of the same area, which makes them rather weak when it comes to wind or other maladies, and so those branches can get ripped off, and plus it's, you know, they're just not balanced. So good to cut below that point. Yes, this second tier here has the little shoots off to the side, but they could develop down there if we cut just that one out. So below it, 1/4 inch. And you see this one, it's not really branching, so you need to cut way back on that because this is getting way too long. Anyway, you get the idea here. It's hard to stop though when you see all these potential things to cut. But I'll come back sometime when you don't have to watch every little snip. Moving on. This is Duncan. And yeah, it's got at least 2 fruit on it. And so we'll wait for that fruit to come off and come back and trim it. Snamdak Mai, all this new flush of growth, and we really need to cut that off. Cut it back, just like we were doing with the carry. We want a compact tree, so anyway, you get the idea. You can come out and possibly talk on your phone or some such thing when you're trimming, doing these little snips on a tree like this. There's no big trick to it. You just have to cut back to about 1/4 inch above the leaf that you want the first branch to form and go from there. Sometimes you can't really see what the branches are until you cut them back, but here's one I cut back already and it's got the new growth. So here's one that I didn't cut back. That was where a bloom panicle had come out. So off it comes. So we'll get back to that tree sometime when you don't need to watch. Here's Pineapple Pleasure. And this tree we didn't touch. I've been using it for grafting. So I want to finish the grafting projects before I trim this back too radically. But basically it's got nice structure right now, and so we'll just make sure it doesn't sprawl too much, cut back, and hopefully it will recover and get quiet over the winter and have a nice fruit production next year. And this is Rosa. And took a few branches out of the center of the tree. Rosa is a rather compact grower, but this is an old tree. So it's one of those many-year projects. And, you know, when this Pineapple Pleasure next door gets a little bigger, we will be more aggressive at cutting Rosa back. And but for now, that's good enough. And this is Valkyrie. It's a little tree. Still made a little cut here. And there's, of course, always things you can do, like cutting back some of this growth to get good branching. energy going to these little lower branches there. This has plenty of time to recover. It's just the beginning of August now, so these little snips are not going to affect the fruit production. And let's see. A few branches I can't quite reach. And then the last thing that I'll mention is that even this turpentine that we cut back a whole lot a few years ago, we trimmed a little bit of that also. You don't bother getting up into the branches too much, though next year that tall one over there that's growing close to the fence will probably need to go. But yeah, it's just good to get the lower branches out, and also the ones that are not that vigorous, you know, they're starting to have a little dieback, so out those should come too. But this tree really did well this year, and a large part of that was because we had cut it back really hard a few years ago. There was just a lot of wood that wasn't real healthy, and so now we have a much healthier tree.